Greetings, dear learners. I am Dr. Shaumili Mandal, an assistant professor of English at Vasant Kanya Mahavidyalaya, admitted to the privileges of Banaras Hindu University. I am in Module 2, that is Week 2. And now we will start with the second lecture, that is Oral Poetry of East and Northeast India, a part of my 5 lecture module. So, oral poetry from Bengal. Firstly, we'll be dealing with this. Oral poetry of Bengal is of various forms. Folk poetry, known as Kobir Lorai, is distinguished by light-hearted wit, banter, and comedy. In this tradition, two poets or groups write rhymes that challenge one another, frequently satirizing current events, political leaders, or social conventions. Example of Kobir Lorai, that is the Battle of the Poets. Poet 1 says, Choto ganer boka, boro ganer shor, ki kora? Means, the little singer is a fool, the big singer is noise. What to do? And the poet 2 says, হ্যাঁ, ছোট গানের বোকা, বড় গানের সুর, শুনতে চাইলে শোন. The translation is, হ্যাঁ, little singers are foolish, big singers are noise. But if you wish to hear it, listen to it. These types of poetic exchanges are not only fun, but also serve as a form of social commentary and entertainment. Also, this category of folk poetry narrates the valorous deeds of warriors, usually focusing on historical battles and local heroes. And one of the most famous traditions of such poetry is the Murshidabad Ghazi ballads. Here I have attached a photo of the scroll of one of the Murshidabad Ghazi. Murshidabad Ghazi, Shastrer Raja, Shasti Dhore Rakbe Deshe, means Murshidabad Ghazi, the king of weapons, takes the punishment and will protect the land. These ballads celebrate the courage and heroism of individuals who fought for the people of their land. The vast range of folk poetry and songs that are transmitted orally in Bengali-speaking areas is referred to as Lok Kobita. This everyday lives, social relationships, labor culture, spirituality, and natural surroundings of rural Bengal all are profoundly ingrained in these poetry genres. Folk poetry frequently tells tales, conveys feelings, and captures the collective knowledge and life experiences of the population. Despite the diversity of Lok Kobita subjects, spirituality, love, nature, social challenges, and communal life are frequently mentioned. Also, these Lok Kobitas are symbols of cultural expression, as through these songs and poetries, Lok Kobita transmits information and moral values while preserving Bengali society's traditions. They are also, as I said, social commentaries as they contain subliminal or explicit criticisms of politics, religion, and society. They frequently serve as a vehicle for social change and a voice for the voiceless. They also give a spiritual and emotional bond to the community, and in different tradition, it cultivates a strong emotional bond with nature, the divine, and humanity. Next, we are going to talk about the oral poetry tradition of Orissa, which is transmitted through the famous forms like Dashkatiya, Shanta, and Chondo. Also, the essential component of the people's cultural life, much like Bengali oral poetry, is similar to Orissa's poetry traditions. It captures the values, beliefs, and customs of Oriya speaking people through the use of rhythm, song, and public performance. The term Chondo describes a particular kind of Oriya metrical poetry that is widely employed in epic and sacred poetry. Strict syllabic and rhythmic patterns are followed in this style. Throughout history, Chondo has been utilized to write stories about religion, bravery, and mythology. During religious ceremonies, even worshipping Lord Jagannath, the ruling god of Orissa, the chanda or chondo form is frequently spoken. The poetic meter evokes devotion and a sense of sacredness because it follows a particular cadence. For example, Joy Jagannath, Puri Nilachal means Hail the Jagannath, Hail Jagannath of Puri, the Blue Mountain. Santha are Oriya folk ballads that recount tales of love, conflicts, and valiant actions. Rural residents perform this at social events, festivals, and harvest celebrations. The words are frequently sung or recited in a rhythmic pattern and are written in straightforward but impactful language. Like many other types of oral poetry, Santha ballads have played a significant role in preserving tales of bravery, morality, and divine intervention for future generations. Hanuman, the monkey god, with devotion and strength did fight, crossing the ocean with a single leap to rescue Sita from the demon's keep. It means that the Hanuman, is releasing, or you can say reviving Sita from Ravana's captivity. Also, then we have Dashkatiya, which is another form of oral poetry that is typically sung in duet by a male and a female vocalist. Usually centered around themes of love, social ideas, and seasonal changes, the song's dialogue rotates between the two performers. Usually, these are conducted in a call and response format. Here, I have attached a photo of the Dashkatiya performance. The Dashkatiya, as I said, has two people, and we can see in the photo that two people are performing the poetry of Dashkatiya. Dashkatiya's back and forth conversations resemble a poetic dance between the actors. It is a storytelling technique that uses humor, rhythm, and emotional appeal. Okay, so if the male singer says that you are coming, my dear, walk along with me, the female singer says, where are you going? In the burning sun. You go in search of my love. The significance of Oriya oral poetry are they have helped in cultural preservation by preserving Orissa's ancient stories, history, and culture. Also, the profound ritual and spiritual life of the people, particularly in relation to the worship of deities like Lord Jagannath, is linked to several forms of oral poetry. Also, they foster a sense of community bonding linked with shared ideals and is also performed in a various of group settings. Next, we are going to talk about the oral poetry from Bihar. So we have Bihar, a state in northeastern India, which also has a rich cultural legacy that includes oral poetry. The social, religious, and historical aspects of the region are reflected in rich heritage and history of Bihar's oral poetry, which is handed down throughout the generations. These poetry forms, which covers topics like love, devotion, bravery, folklore, and the complexity of human experience, provide a window into the people's daily lives, hardships, and pleasures. We have the Alha, the ancient epic poetry, which is normally sung as a ballad. Alha was a mythical warrior, and other local heroes are frequently the subject of the poetry, which describes their valiant actions and travels. These songs, which frequently include legendary or historical characters, tell us tales of bravery and valor. The singers, who are the Alha Kavis, we say, they perform the Alha songs, telling the stories, as I said, of regional heroes. The majesty of these mythical stories is enhanced by the music and rhythm. आल्हा की कहानी सुनो सब भाई शमशेर की चमक जो रही थी उजाई means listen to the story of Alha, the shine of the sword blinding everyone in its way. There's also another term of poetry, another oral poetry tradition, which is called Vachika. And this is usually recited or spoken out occasionally with only a little accompaniment. It is used to convey strong feelings that are frequently connected to philosophical ideas. and they are delivered in a rhythmic pattern. In Bihar, Vachika poetry is typically included in folk shows or community events where spoken word is prioritized above sung melody. It frequently takes place on the spot and tackles social and local issues, frequently with humor or introspection. Here I've attached a few lines of the Vachika form of poetry. जिंदगी के रास्ते पे चलते हैं सब अपनी मंजिल का पता नहीं रहते means everyone walks along the path of life, yet none knows where the destination lies. The significance of this form of poetry are, as I have said earlier in the earlier two slides, it helps in preserving the cultural identity of Bihar, which is very necessary. And these customs, which are passed down from one generation to another, giving people a strong sense of regional belonging and frequently representing the experiences of the entire population. Also, it helps to preserve history and mythological and historical accounts of bravery and heroism. In a fun and approachable way, these poems depict Bihar's political and cultural past. Also, it helps in community building, as performing oral poetry in public is a common way for people to bond. By bringing people together, it strengthens social ties and upholds common customs and beliefs. Next, we are going to talk about the oral poetry from Jharkhand. In the oral poetry from Jharkhand, I'll be talking about the Angika poetry. The Angika poetry, or you can say the Angika oral tradition of poetry, a form of oral tradition poetry, consists of Angika speaking people, mostly from the Anga area, which includes parts of Bihar, Jharkhand, and West Bengal. So we had earlier, right, the Anga, Vanga, and Kalinga. The Bihari language group includes the Angika language, and oral poetry has a strong cultural, historical, and traditional foundation in this area. The themes of the poetry are nature and the seasons. The relationship between humans and the land is frequently reflected in this poetry. Recurring themes include the harvest, the shifting of the seasons, and also the splendor of nature. Also, we have longing, separation, and the agony of distance, which are familiar emotional and personal themes that are frequently conveyed with simplicity and great feeling. Also, they give us the devotion and faith during religious festivals and rites. They express reverence for gods, goddesses, and the divine. These poems also depict the harmony between people and nature, honor the beauty and simplicity of country life. I have given here an example of the Angika poetry. फूलन के गंध में सुख मिलेला, सांझ के बयार में ठंडक पावेला, गांव में सुकून और शांति बा, धरती माँ के आशीर्वाद से सबका साथ बा. Means the fragrance of flowers bring joy, the evening breeze brings coolness, in the village there is peace and tranquility, with the blessings of Mother Earth we all stand united. Also, this kind of poetry is, you can say, has bonded the people. And like other oral poetry forms, it also creates a sense of belonging and longingness amongst the people. Next, we are going to talk about the oral poetry from Nagaland. In the oral poetry from Nagaland, the vast and varied storytelling, singing, and poetry traditions of the Naga people, who mostly live in northeastern India, in Nagaland, parts of Myanmar, are referred to as Naga oral poetry. An essential component of the Naga tribe's unique cultural traditions is their oral poetry, which has been passed down through ages. The history, mythology, customs, and everyday lives of the people are all intricately linked to these creative expressions. The major themes are a lot of Naga poetry is recited orally and at significant religious and cultural events. These could include anything, ranging from harvest festivals, rites of passage, and battle, victory celebrations. The poems are used as chants, prayers, or thanksgiving, and respect for the ancestors and gods. Also, the Naga people have a long history of bravery, and a large portion of their oral poetry is based on the exploits of warriors, heroes, and the ancestors of warriors. These poems, which preserve the valor and the history of the Naga people, frequently describe conflicts, triumphs, and valiant deeds. Also, They express their emotions through the poetry. Here, I have attached a photo of one of the Naga tribes. Also, there is very one famous Naga epic we have, which is called the Chakrashila epic. That is the Monpa Naga epic. And as I said you, that I have attached a photo of one of the tribes, one of the Naga tribes. So as you can see, the photo is of the Monpa tribe women. One of the known epics from the Naga tradition is Chakrashila epic, which is famous among the Monpa tribe. This epic talks about the creation of the world, the origins of the Monpa people, and their struggle with external enemies and divine forces. For example, I'll just say a few lines which are English translated from this epic. When the first ray of the sun touched the earth, the mountains rose, the rivers flowed. The gods looked down upon the land and blessed the people with strength and courage. The next, we are going to talk about the oral poetry from Arunachal Pradesh. In Arunachal Pradesh, the indigenous group's cultural traditions heavily rely on oral poetry. Numerous tribes, each with its own unique language, culture, and literary traditions, call northeastern India's Arunachal Pradesh home. Generation after generation, oral poetry is used to honor the relationship with nature and the divine, convey values, express emotions, and preserve history. The distinct cultures of Arunachal Pradesh, several tribes include the Adis, Apatanis, Monpas, Nishis, Mishmis, Nyaishis, and others are reflected in the state's oral poetry. Here, I have attached a photo of the Apatani tribe person. Poetry frequently deals with topics like nature, spirituality, heroism, ancestral wisdom, rituals, and communal life, despite linguistic variances. Mythological stories are at the heart, and here also we have the Monpa oral poetry. The creation of the earth, the appearance of the first humans, and the formation of natural features like mountains, rivers, and forests are all described in these poetries and hymns. These tales are frequently chanted or sung with a certain cadence and rhythm that heightens the spiritual experience. Many of the oral poems of the Buddhist Monpas have spiritual meaning. Buddhist celebrations, ceremonies, and prayers, such as the Chewar ceremony, a rite of passage, or Losar, the Monpa New Year, include the recitation of these poems. These poems may contain the invocation of spirits, pleas to the gods, and wishes for the community's prosperity, well being, and tranquility. They may also include recitations of mantras and Buddhist texts. The Monpa people have creation stories that explain how the world came into being. The stories are conveyed in poetic forms. So I'll read one more English translation of these poems. In the beginning there was darkness. The earth was bare, no trees, no hills. Then the gods came with light and warmth, and the earth began to breathe, to form. Mountains rose, rivers flowed, the wind began to blow, the sun to glow. From the sky the earth was born, a world of life where dawn is sown. The Monpas Buddhist customs are closely linked to their oral poetry. As I said, to get blessings for health, fertility, serenity, and prosperity. They are repeated as prayers, invocations, or sacrifices to Buddha, spirits, and ancestors. It is believed that reciting this poetry represents a kind of spiritual devotion. The moral themes we have are of responsibility, courage, honor, reverence for the environment, and community. Younger generations are frequently taught the values that are significant in their culture through the heroic ballads and folk music. It is an essential component of social gatherings due to its performative aspect. Poetry and song provide a common place for expressive feeling and balancing life and also commemorating important occasions in the community, whether at weddings, funerals, or harvest festivals. Next, we are going to talk about the oral poetry from Sikkim. In the Sikkimese oral poetry tradition, the cultural and social life of the Sikkimese people, especially the indigenous groups like the Bhutias, Lepchas, and Nepali speaking tribes, is reflected in the rich and varied legacy. I have attached here a photo of the Lepcha tribe, and these are the women of the Lepcha tribe and how they dress themselves. These oral traditions are extremely important for maintaining mythology, history, and cultural identity, because they have been handed down through the centuries. In Sikkimese culture, poets, often known as bards, are frequently revered as spiritual mentors or community leaders. They might be entrusted with directing the populace by their wisdom, maintaining knowledge, and transmitting stories. Being able to recite these tales is seen as an honor, and the poet's function is revered. An integral part of the rich cultural legacy of the Lepcha people, as I said, the indigenous form a group from northeastern India, is Lepcha oral poetry or Mun. The Lepcha people's oral poetry frequently focuses on their mythology, spirituality, and close relationship with nature. The majority of Lepcha oral poetry is performed as opposed to written. The performance is an essential component of communal life and is sung or chanted with a unique rhythm. Solo recitations or ensemble performances are possible, and some poems may be accompanied by traditional instruments such as the thorn, a flute, or damfu, a type of drum. Lepcha poetry is deeply expressive, and though it's challenging to translate fully, the following example captures some of its essence. So I'll read out a simple poem which is invocation to natures and spirits. O mighty river, flowing with grace, take my prayers and carry them to the sacred place. O grand mountain, with your snow capped peak, give me strength and let my spirits speak. This poem reflects the reverence the Lepcha people hold for natural elements and their desire for guidance and blessings from the spiritual entity. So, next, we are going to talk about the oral poetry from Tripura. So, the Tripuri people of Tripura, an indigenous ethnic group in northeastern India, have a rich literary and cultural heritage that includes Kokborok oral poetry. The Tripuri people speak Kokborok, and their oral literature has a lengthy history that captures their history, values, beliefs, and way of life. This oral poetry is a vital component of social and cultural life and is transmitted through the generations by poets, storytellers, and community elders. Kokborok oral poetry takes many different forms, including as folk songs, ritual songs, ballads, and epics from mythology. In addition to being a kind of artistic expression, these poems help to preserve tradition, history, and the community's spiritual ties to the natural world and the divine. Within the cultural and spiritual traditions of the Kokborok speaking people of Tripura, India, Bausak or Boshak, we say, is an important and revered type of oral poetry. It is essential to their spiritual activities, ceremonies, and rituals. The word Boshak or Boshak describes devotional or ritualistic poetry that is closely related to the community's relationship with nature, the divine, and its ancestors. It is typically performed or recited at festivals, religious ceremonies, and other significant ceremonial events. The community's spiritual identity is strengthened via this form of oral tradition. It is a manifestation of one's trust and conviction in the supernatural forces that control existence. The community maintains and fortifies its ties to the divine and to one another through the recitation of Baushak poetry. Additionally, the poetry serves a societal purpose. It is chanted at ceremonies, festivals, and rites where everyone in the community comes together. As the people gather to carry out these customs, which serve as a means of exchanging shared beliefs, aspirations, and prayers, it promotes solidarity and unity. The poetry frequently imparts moral lessons, including appreciation for life's blessings, reverence for the natural world, and the value of society. The purpose of this poetry is to teach the next generation about their moral and spiritual obligation through its recitation. Also, it has the invocation of deities and nature. And now I'm giving you an example of a poem invoking the protection and blessings of nature spirits and deities, asking for peace and prosperity. So I am giving you the poem which is English translated from the Kokborok. Spirits of the forest, wind and sky, we call upon you, hear our cry. Protect our fields, our homes and kin. Guide us with your light within. O mighty earth, our mother so true, bless us with rains, the skies too so blue. May our crops go strong, our rivers flow with your grace may we forever grow. In this example, the speaker invokes nature spirits and deities, asking them for blessings for the crops, health, and prosperity of the community. It highlights the intimate relationship between humans and nature. Now, we come to the oral poetry of Meghalaya, an important component of the rich cultural legacy of the Khasi people. So, Meghalaya has three kinds of tribe: the Khasi, the Jayantia, and the Garo people. So, they are an indigenous group in Meghalaya, northeastern India. And in order to preserve their history, culture, and spiritual beliefs, the Khasi people have a long standing tradition of oral literature, storytelling, and song. An important part is the society's cultural and religious life, which is passed through oral poetry. Mythology, nature, spirituality, love, and social issues are just a few of the topics covered in Khasi oral poetry, which is renowned for its lyrical quality and rhythmic pattern. So, the most common thing which we have is the creation of the Khasi people, which they say as a mythological poem. The Khasi creation myth is an important part of their oral tradition. It describes the creation of the universe, the earth, and the Khasi people. The poem is often recited during the religious ceremonies or during cultural events. I'll give you an English translation of the poem. In the beginning, the earth was a barren land, the skies were empty, with no stars to stand. Then the Great Spirit spoke in a voice so deep, and the mountains arose from the water's sweep. He created the rivers, the forest, and the trees, and in the hills he placed the Khasi with ease. The sun and the moon were made to the shine, and the spirit of the land forever divine. The creation speaks about, the poem actually speaks about the divine origin of the Khasi people and their deep connection to the land and nature. So, listeners, thank you for listening to my lecture about the oral poetry traditions of Northeast India and East India. Here, I have tried to give you the region specific oral poetry traditions accordingly, and I hope that I'll be able to give you about more oral poetry traditions of various parts of India in my coming lectures. Thank you.